So good evening, everyone. I'm Jackie Gerwin, and together with the Walled Lake Schools PTSA Council, we're hosting this candidate forum for our district state legislative reps. Our concern is the quality of education in the Walled Lake School District and the impact our state legislature has on what happens at the local level. We've issued invitations to everyone running in the 5 state representative districts that fall within the Walled Lake Schools. We've asked them to come and share their views about their future of education in Michigan. These districts include 29, 37, 38, 39, and 44. Out of the 12 people who filed for state rep, I will introduce the ones who accepted our invitations. From District 37, Christine Gregg and Mitch Swoboda. From District 38, Kelly Breen and Kathy Crawford. From District 39, Ryan Furman and Anthony Croft. And from District 44, Laura Denham. Thank you all for being here tonight. Also on the ballot, but not here tonight, is Brenda Carter from 29, and Timothy Carrier, also from District 29. Brian Wright from District 38, Jennifer Sudan from District 39, and Matt Maddock from District 44.
We'll start with Ms. Gregg for the opening statements.
Well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Christine Gregg. I represent Farmington and Farmington Hills. So that little sliver along Integrity Road that goes into Walled Lake Schools. Very proud to serve my community. I'm running for my 3rd and final term as state representative. My activism started in the PTA at Farmington Public Schools. I served as the PTA District Council President, and it was there that I went to Washington, D.C. and to Lansing to advocate for better funding and less testing for our students. And that's when I realized that I actually needed to run for office and be an advocate for parents. A lot of people said, were you on the school board? I was like, no, I was a meddling parent. Education has always been on the top of my priority list. I have 3 sons, and I just saw the difference between what the funding was for my 2 older ones versus my younger, and I just knew I had to work there for everyone's child. PTA motto, every child, one voice, and that's what I work on in Lansing every day. Thank you.
It's like working, okay. My name is Mitch Swoboda. I am the 37th district there. I was in the Air Force for 8 years. I'm in the Coast Guard Auxiliary. And I been, involved in working in local politics for a while, but this is my first time, actually second time running for office. But my wife is a teacher with the Walled Lake School District. My wife is also was with the West Bloomfield School District, and she's acted as a music teacher, and I think so. Education's been very important to me and my family there. One of the big things I'm concerned about is getting vocational training and getting vocational training for the kids in school, because not every kid is well able to make it to college and everything. So that's what I'm trying to work.
All right, I'm not going to use that for a second. Ms. Breen, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Breen. I'm currently on Novi City Council. I'm running for the 38th House District. I have 2 little kids. One goes to Parkview Elementary. She's in 2nd grade there. My son, he's in a Montessori. He will be going to Parkview next year for kindergarten. I'm married to a teacher. He actually spent 10 years teaching in a charter school. Now he's in a public school. And my father, he's also a teacher. He's currently teaching shop in Livonia. He taught electronics and robotics down in Taylor for over 35 years. In Novi, on City Council, I get to do a lot of things with kids, but I'm very proud of my involvement with the schools. I've been working with the Sandy Hook Promise and Novi Public Schools to help find ways to reduce violence overall. I have a vested interest in public schools. Obviously, I care deeply, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts on what you think we can all do better. Thank you.
Ms. Crawford.
I think there we go. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Crawford, and I have been the state representative for the 38th district now for two-year terms. I'm in my second term, and I'm running for my last two-year term as state representative. I was the founder and the first director of the Novi Senior Center, and we built senior housing as well. When I retired, I was asked to be a candidate on Novi City Council, and I won that election, and I served on Novi City Council for 3 years, and then I went on to the Oakland County Board of Commissioners, where I served 2 terms. I've owned a small business, authored several books, and have published a memoir that's in its 4th printing. I'm currently very active in my district, serving on committees, and I'm the chair of the Novi Historical Commission and a number of other committees. In my 4 years as state rep, I've never missed a vote on the House floor or in the 8 committees that I have served on. The committees I'm currently appointed to are Vice Chair of Local Government, Workforce and Talent Development, Regulatory Reform, and the Education Committee. Thank you.
Mr. Berman.
Thank you. I'm Ryan Berman. I was born and raised in the district. The 39th district encompasses western West Bloomfield, Commerce Township, and Wixom. I grew up at 15 in Haggerty and went to Maple Elementary Schools in the Walled Lake School District. Walled Lake School District makes up the majority of the 39th, but actually we have 4 districts, including West Bloomfield, Huron Valley, and Waterford. School education is very important to me. I think a couple of the other panel members here we have in common. I'm married to a teacher. My wife worked in the South Lyon School District. She now works kindergarten at Temple Israel. My daughters go to school in the Walled Lake School Districts. I too have a vested interest for schools and education. Myself, I'm an attorney, so I've gone through a lot of education. And one of my main issues that I've been campaigning on for the past year is bringing skilled trades, vocational trainings back into the Walled Lake School Districts, into the high schools themselves. Thank you.
Mr. Croft.
Hey, my name is Anthony Croft. I'm also running the 39th district. That is Commerce Township, West Bloomfield, and Wixom, and Wolverine Lake. I think I'm the youngest person up here. I'm 26. Probably the youngest in the whole room, but I am a libertarian. November 6th, there will be a libertarian on the ballot with Ryan right here, my opponent right here. Libertarians, if you don't know what that is, we believe in limited government, taxation and stuff, and homeschooling for most educational needs. So that's really what I'm all about.
Ms. Dodd.
Hi, my name is Laura Dodd, and I am a mom of a 4-year-old. I'm running for the 44th House District, and I'm so happy to see so many kids here, and I hope you're going to write questions too, because your questions are probably just as important as the adult questions, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. I am the daughter of a middle school orchestra teacher, and my oldest sister is a language coordinator. So I've been in the public schools and involved in public schools my whole life, and I think they're probably one of the best investments we can make in our future. So for me, Michigan's headed the wrong way in education, and we need to stop, take a look, and figure out what we can do to properly invest in the schools and start really doing right by our kids to give them the best education they can possibly get. So I'm excited to share my ideas and thoughts with you during this panel. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Thank you.
I do have one written statement from Brian Wright of the 38th District, and he says, go ahead and tell me on this one too. Dear esteemed forum members, sadly I must decline attendance tonight because I have very little constructive to offer in dealing with a broad range of issues of the compulsory state schooling system of Michigan as it now stands, including matters before the Walled Lake District. From the League of Women Voters questionnaire, he believes that education, like religion, is not the business of the state. The percentage of Michigan state school attendees grades 3 through 8 with proficiency in math and reading for 2014 to 2015 was a whopping 38.5%.
Compulsory factory state schools are not going to improve. Homeschooled children, now more than 2 million strong nationwide, are 5 to 10 years ahead of compulsion system kids in their ability to think. Unfortunately, that's too big of an elephant in the room to ignore. We need to transition away from the state having a role in how we educate ourselves and our children. The finest writer on this subject is John Taylor Gatto and his Underground History of American Education. All right, so we'll stop there. We'll go ahead and we'll start with our first questions. I'm going to start with Mr. Swoboda on this round.
Are you familiar with the School Funding Research Collaborative? What would be your plans to improve funding in public schools, and how would you fund it?
I'm kind of familiar with that flyer and the information you have sent me there. My thing is I would like to fund the school district, but I want to also make sure that the money is wisely spent. That's the big thing I want to do. I would, try to do everything I can. They get the teachers paid, up there, but I also want to make sure that the money is going towards the students. And that's the big thing. And I want to get programs in there that will benefit the kids, and they get funding for that. And vocational training, I want to get funding for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Breen.
Hi, thank you. I am familiar with that report. It is large, it is complicated, just like school funding. And one thing that I derive from that is that we need to do something different. We need to make sure that funding is targeted. It costs more to educate a 4-year-old. It costs more to educate a kid with special needs. It costs more to educate a kid where English is a second language, or if they have been drinking well-tainted water. It is not a one-size-fits-all thing when it comes to education. So, and we saw what happened when the recession hit and property values plummeted and funding for schools dropped. We are still not funding our schools back at the 2009 levels. We need to do it better, and we need to make sure that it is targeted appropriately to all students so that all students have an equal chance to succeed.
All right, Ms. Crawford.
Well, I agree totally that we need to do something about school funding. We need to add more funding. One of the problems that I saw 2 years ago was that at-risk students were not, most of our schools, at least in the 38th district, are high-performing schools, and they weren't getting any at-risk dollars at all for students that were ESL, were students that were speaking a foreign language at home, and then they needed extra attention at school. And they also needed, there were some that had problems at home, maybe they were low income, and there were other kinds of things going on at home. So I did not approve the budget 2 years ago for that reason, without adding something to the budget. So this year and last year, we were able to get at-risk funding for District 38, and in the Wall Lake School District, it amounted to $777,000.
Thank you. Mr. Berman.
Yeah, I've taken a look at that study as well, and I believe and it was addressed at the candidate forum just prior to this one with the school board, and the figure was $9,500 is what it came up with per pupil funding as an adequate level. However, we have to look at the underlying assumptions for what that represents. Currently, 80% of our school dollars goes into staffing and building and maintenance, and only 20% to programs. So we do need to look at, and I think we can all agree that something needs to change, and I believe no matter what it is, we need more transparency so we can follow the money, so we can see where those dollars are going so they end up in the classroom where they're supposed to be.
Thank you. Mr. Croft.
When you're talking about funding schools, you're talking about paying. Now, the government don't have the money. Government is broke. The only way government can afford anything is they take money from citizens. So, I don't really funding schools on government level is an overreach. That is not the job of government. But I do think that community can fund schools themselves. I don't think the government should be involved in funding schools because they don't have money, they can't make money. They can only steal it and they do it by taxes. Oh, yeah.
Ms. Dunn?
I'm sorry. It's complicated every time.
I have read and actually spent a lot of time with the study from the School Funding Research Collaborative, and I think it's great that they came at it from the approach of what does it cost to educate a child, not what does it cost to educate a child in a public school or a charter school or a private school. It's just what does it cost to educate a child. With the exception of Walled Lake schools, the 44th district encompasses Huron Valley schools, Holly schools, and Waterford schools, who all receive the lowest level of state funding, which is actually closer to 7,500 versus the 9,500 that they're saying is a baseline to educate a child. And so what's happening in those schools is they're doing the absolute best they can, but they're not able to move ahead, to be innovative, to try really interesting things because the money is so tight. And they're working bond issue to millage proposal, hoping that the money's going to be there. And so I think we really need to look and start our funding of schools from what's that baseline need and move up from there.
The collaborative report actually came after a different report that said we're underfunding by average $2,000 per pupil across the state. What the collaborative did was say, what is the baseline? And if you look at that, that's $9,500. Then it said, then you have to get additional resources to students based on the needs. So let's say you're up in the UP and everything is so far apart, a lot more money needs to go to transportation. Or if you have a high population of low-income families or ELL or special needs, then you build upon that 9,500. So there's a lot more that needs to go into this. In terms of the funding, we have two major pots of money in the state. We have the school aid fund and we have the general fund. We have $14 billion going into the school aid fund, and that was traditionally used for K-12 schools. We now pay for all of our community colleges out of that same fund and higher education. We've got to get back to the point where we're using that as it was intended by the voters for K-12 education. That's how you get money in the classroom.
All right, so we'll move on to the next question. We'll be starting this one with Ms. Green. Do you support Betsy DeVos as Secretary of Education? Why or why not?
That's a big no. Big no. I admire her passion for education, but I believe it's misguided. We have the largest number of charter schools here in the state, and while I do understand that it does not, there's a time and a place for charter schools, but the way Michigan's going about it is just wrong. 85% of our charter schools here are for-profit. We need to take the profit out of the equation. And I say this as somebody who is married to somebody who taught in a charter school for 10 years. I believe that we should be directing our public tax dollars to public schools so that our students have the resources that they need. If we are able to retarget the funding, we can make sure that we've got enough for the kids that want to pursue careers in trades and arts and music. Right now, there's just not enough money to cover all of it. And I think her lack of training and understanding schools and education is just completely a detriment to all of our kids.
Thank you.
Ms. Crawford.
Well, it's kind of an awkward question. I mean, it's not really up to me whether Betsy DeVos, it doesn't really reflect on what we're doing here in Michigan so much. I mean, I don't get anything in the education committee coming down from Betsy DeVos that says we need to do this or that or whatever. So I guess I don't really know how to answer. I mean, I'm supportive of, I guess, I don't know, I just really don't have anything to say about it because I don't think it really is anything that I have any control over, whether Betsy DeVos is there or not. So I guess I don't really have anything to say about it, sorry.
Mr. Berman.
I actually agree with Kathy.
it's irrelevant, and especially at the state level here as state representative. I think overall the federal government has been growing and overstepping its roles when it comes down to some of these issues. This education, I think more people like to have local control. I think it's much more important who's on the school board. And just like our candidate forum before this, of the school board members to find out to what's going to happen in your local community. We have too much duplication of services in the state with the local school board, the intermediate school districts, the state board of education. And I think we need to have more of that local control because our community, just what was going on here, is different than even up in northern Michigan.
Mr. Cross.
What's her name again?
Betsy DeVos.
Heard the name before, but I never heard her speak ever, so I have no idea. Sorry, can't answer the question. Sound like a nice woman though.
So I think that focusing on local issues and the ideas that there are layers of people that we deal with in Michigan that really take Betsy DeVos out of the equation. I think that's accurate, but what she's doing that really concerns me as far as citizens in Michigan and the people in Michigan, it's twofold. I'm very concerned about college debt and the role that she seems to be playing in college debt, specifically associated with for-profit colleges. We were pretty clear that that was relatively predatory, and now all of a sudden these people who were involved in these predatory student loans have to start paying them back, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Number two is the protections for people with disabilities. And she's removed a lot of that, a lot of the things that we are supposed to do as school districts for people who have learning needs that are different than the standard, she's removing. And that's very concerning for me because that's not something we can ignore at a local level. If it comes down from the top that this isn't legal, all of a sudden school districts are going to be saving that money and not providing those services, and I think that's too bad.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I absolutely do not support Betsy DeVos as our leading person in this country for education. And why it matters is because she came from Michigan and she was the driving force behind the free market for-profit movement in this state. And it is not working, it is failing our children. And to take that to Washington, D.C. and try to use that as a model across our country, it's wrong. And what she wants to do next is move it to a voucher system. My sister is a high school teacher in Indiana. They've had voucher systems for several years. It is destroying the community. We have communities trying to take other students from other communities, and they're falling apart. When we are talking about educating our children, it's not free market. You have winners and losers when you're talking about the market. This is our social infrastructure that we're talking about. And we have to invest. It is the role of the government to provide a quality education for all of our children.
Mr. Swoboda.
I'm kind of against the federal government meddling in local school districts. So that being said, I feel that we need to get our school districts, working together and making make school districts a quality place to be. And I feel a lot of times it could be done through competition. Sometimes a lot of charter schools I know help out, and there's good and bad. But I want a choice of the people to pick where the kids want to go to school, whether it be homeschool, whether it be let the parents make the choice of where they want to sell their kids, and that's what I feel.
All right, thank you all very much.
Our next question. What will you do to improve safety within our schools, and how would you fund it? We will start this one with Ms. Crawford.
Well, actually, the state has really done a lot recently in trying to protect students. We've got to find out if our buildings are hardened. We need to know if our school sometimes the schools I know in Novi, where my grandson goes, you have to push buttons and you have to speak to someone before you can get into school. But the students actually know that somebody can come in a different door at another time. So we need professionals to go into the schools, and that's exactly what the state is currently doing. They are going to school systems, and there's grants available to harden the schools. I am not in favor of arming teachers unless locals really wish, I think that's local control, but I am not in favor of guns in school. And I think that's something that each district is going to have to deal with. I would rather have professionals in the school who are law enforcement.
I'll just stop introducing you because it just takes extra time. So go ahead and pass it along.
As far as school safety, here in the Walled Lake School Districts, we had a bond millage increase last year just for that purpose that passed, and they've put in a lot of money into hardening our schools and securing these facilities. I think that's absolutely critical to do that and have professionals doing a security assessment to make sure everything is in order so there aren't any loopholes that could make our kids vulnerable. Our students, our kids are our most important asset. When you drop them off to school or watch them get on the bus that day, you're putting their safety, their care, their lives into the schools, into the school districts. And there's nothing more important than that.
Talk about school safety. First of all, putting security guards, police officer trained guards in schools is a bad idea. What you don't want to do is treat our children like criminals, because they're not. And doing that does not work. All my high school, middle school, and elementary school life, I've been to schools with metal detectors, security guards, and we got searched with dogs, and it didn't work. Kids still guarding drugs, there was still gun violence. It don't work. All it does is treat our children like criminals, and if you treat them like criminals, they act like criminals. But keeping our schools safe, my real concern is safe from the government. The government indoctrinated school system, that I want to keep them safe from. Our school system are not teaching our children at all. They're indoctrinating them and making them regurgitate. I think that is very, very, very messed up, and it's killing the knowledge of our students. Our students can barely read, barely do anything. Thank you so much.
I think there's definitely a level of helping to secure the schools that we need to do. I think that what I would focus on is investing in school personnel. I think having trusted, caring adults with the students throughout their entire academic career is really important. And in recent years, because of lack of school funding, the people we've been cutting are the social workers and the school psychologists and the counselors and the music teachers and the art teachers and all the people kids who feel a little out of place and awkward go to. My mom was a middle school orchestra director, and every day kids ate lunch in her room because they didn't feel safe going to the cafeteria. And so for their 4 years in school, they had a safe place to go. In so many of our schools, those people don't exist anymore. And I think those kids who feel awkward, out of place, and scared really don't have those trusted adults to talk to. And I think that's an area where we do need to invest. It will make great kids. It'll help people stay in school. And I think it will also really improve the safety of our schools to have good, trusted adults.
I think that's a great point. I think we have made a lot of good improvements just in the facilities themselves. I do also agree with the previous comment about not militarizing our schools too. That's so important. I've run into incidents because there were police officers there that things were escalated and they didn't need to be. But also making the buildings safer, putting in procedures, we've had active shooter training. It's just so sad that we have to do that, but those are some of the things we have to do. But it is, as Laura was saying too, it's like getting at the root of the problem, and that is really knowing our kids, right, and helping them and getting the resources that they need so that we can stop some of the tragedies that happen. Mental health investment is really needed in this country too, for a lot of different reasons. And I absolutely am opposed to guns in schools, and that's from listening to parents and to teachers and to administrators, and I think we have to trust their opinion on that.
Being in the military, I lived on a base that had security guards at the front gate. We had concertina wire. We had sniper towers. And then he had a sign saying, "Welcome the white men." But anyways, we need to, on our schools, when I was a baby, I go to many schools where my wife's the teacher. I buzz the door. They don't even ask me what it is. They just boom, open the door, and I can walk right in. In the morning, there's a lot of these schools. We need to have a security systems guy to go through and sit down and spend money on protecting our kids. I like to have resource officers there, but I also like to cut out the bullying, because a lot of the kids who are doing the shooting is they're grabbing their dad's gun, whatever it is, and saying, "I'm going to go out there and kill the guy who's just bullying me." That's got to be thing. We got to have active resources on bullying. That's the big thing right now, and mental health. That's the big thing right now.
I think that the day that Sandy Hook happened is probably one of the worst days of my life and for us as a nation. And it was hard to even just get up and move the rest of the day, the rest of the week, the rest of the month. And since then, we've made some progress. But when it comes to keeping our kids safe, we've got external and internal factors. And Mr. Berman brought up the point that you guys passed a bond millage, and that helps with some of the external factors. Busing, school hardening. But then there's the internal factors. And the Sandy Hook promise is focused on reducing violence overall. And it does it without even mentioning guns. And as Laura brought up also, we need to focus on making sure that our kids are adjusted. If we're going to spend money on anything, it needs to be on social workers, on counselors, making sure that our kids feel comfortable in our schools. We recently approved an additional school resources officer, Novi, to stop bullying. Those are the things I think we need to focus on.
Don't work at once. All right, so our next question, we'll be beginning with Mr. Berman. How might you reach out to the homeschool community to understand why those families chose to leave or not enter the public school system? What would you do to engage with them?
I'm surprised it's not happening now. And I've, on the doors, ran into a few people that have chosen to leave the public school system to either homeschool or put their kids into private school for one reason or another. But there should be a mechanism there so our school district could know those reasons to, assess what's going on, what can change to make it more convenient or adaptable for these families, for these concerns, to open up our district for everybody, the community, which it already is.
All right. Mr. Crawford.
I am 100% for homeschooling, so I would say thank you so very much for not indoctrinating the child and for taking the parental responsibility and educating your child. That is not the responsibility of the state or the government or any politicians you may bring, any state. So I will tell them thank you very much, and I will most definitely advocate that for everyone. Public schools is a failure, and I don't see no difference between public schools and prisons.
My previous career was is in nonprofits, and I spent a lot of time in museums. And so in that, I saw a lot of homeschool groups and public school groups come. And I think there's a couple of really great ways to merge back together, homeschool and private homeschool and public school. And that's through the arts, it's through sports and athletics, It's also through opportunities where larger groups are important. When there are assemblies or special unique opportunities that you can't do one-on-one, it takes a bigger group to get it in, inviting people in for things like that. I've told you my mom was a middle school orchestra teacher and my dad was a small business owner, and my dad used to always say, no, you should never do any of those things I just talked about, because then it takes away the public school's competitive edge. But to me, there should be ways to be able to bring people together through these sort of entryway things, and then if they feel comfortable and they build a relationship in the school and they want to come back, great.
I think we have to make it easier to communicate with families that homeschool as well. There's a lot of limitations on what school districts can do to contact students once they pull out of a public school and say, I'm going to be homeschooled. There have been a few times, because of tragedies actually, that we've tried to introduce legislation to say that someone needs to check in on the kids. And that there's a great pushback on that. So we've got to look at the laws to see if there's better ways that we can actually communicate with those families. But we do a lot of collaboration. I know our PTA opens up the annual reflections program to all the kids that are homeschooled as well. So there are a lot of programs where we can start opening that dialogue, because there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of good reasons to homeschool. And we can learn from that, and we can improve our public schools, and we can also find partnerships where part of the time is with the public school and the other part is home-based. You might be a traveling athlete, you might have other considerations to be at home, but there's a lot more we can do.
My daughter, she homeschools. A lot of it is because of religious reasons. You got to understand why people homeschool. They don't like some of the things that the school districts have been teaching or whatever they are going through. Is not going towards a moral value of the parents. That's the big thing right now. That's one reason why you want to pull out to homeschool their kids, because they're getting indoctrinated into a scheme that they don't want to be indoctrinated to. Basically, is trying to teach the basic reading, writing, arithmetic, but don't indoctrinate the kids in things and other things like that. That's my big thing.
We have a lot of different ways to communicate these days. I think today I was looking at something with a friend, and I think I counted like 6 different ways in which we communicated. And we can make better use of the technology that we have in order to make sure that these kids that are homeschooled are also not losing out on opportunities that public schools have to offer. And Laura brought up some good points, such as field trips, athletics, ways to bring them into the fold. And you also have to look at why these kids are not being homeschooled. Is it the curriculum? Is it a health reason? Is it the social network in the school? Maybe they just don't feel like they fit in. Maybe they are athletes and they are just away far too often. Maybe it's their parents' positions. So I think that we can expand upon the available technology in order to bring kids in, whether it's through Skype or Facebook, as well as make a general effort to reach out to these kids and bring their families into the fold. I think that would serve both our public schools and these homeschooled kids well.
Well, I think in my district, I see a lot of collaboration between homeschool and private school, as well as public schools. One of the greatest places, actually, for all people to go is the library. Our library has great teen centers, and everybody is welcome, and the kids all interact. So the library has classes and free opportunities. It's a great way for everybody in the community to come together. So that's one of the places that I think a lot of the homeschoolers go. They use the technology that's there, as well as they attend programs and things at the library. I don't see, in our community, ed also offers a number of classes and programs that are for everyone, and everyone seems to participate. So I don't see that we're really having great difficulty one way or the other. I haven't heard from anyone that's being homeschooled that they can't find classes to go to or they can't interact with others.
All right, so Mr. Croft, we'll start with you this time.
How important is it for you to try and get more funding for vocational and technical ed in our schools, and how would you do that?
Once again, the government has no money. The only way we can get money is by asking taxpayers to pay for everything. And the taxpayers have no choice in that. They have no consent. That is called stealing. I'm not a thief. I know most politicians are, but I'm not. So until we can find out how to fund schools without stealing, I mean, that's really no question.
In Michigan right now, we have a skilled trade shortage, and so I think we need to refocus on skilled trades, all because they're important jobs, we need them, and also for a lot of kids, that's the career path they should be on. The college path isn't the right path for every kid, so having vocational education and having different paths, I think, makes a whole lot of sense. There are some great partnerships, I think, to be made with the skilled trade unions, skilled trade organizations, where it's not necessarily all taxpayer money. It could be money coming from those organizations to help fund. The other thing, I think, is working with community colleges and doing I'm going to just take this away because it's weird, and doing early entry to community college to focus on things like nursing, cosmetology, some of those other things. College is great, and I know a lot of people who went into those programs and did college years later and paid for it because they had jobs. And I think that sounds like a really smart idea.
The one thing I get a little concerned about is that there's a lot of talk about either or when it comes to skilled trades or college. And I think it's lifelong learning, right? And so we need to introduce kids at earlier and earlier ages to opportunities in all different lines of work. And then those passions start to emerge naturally. And then as they get on into middle school and high school, then they'll gravitate toward the career that they want. But after high school, I think it's so important, regardless of where you think your career is going to take you, that you get some classes in higher education. Because the jobs in skilled trade today are going to change. And some of them may even not even be there. All of our jobs, actually, because of the digital age that we live in, are changing. So we have to make sure, I think, that you get an experience with higher education so that when your job changes later, if it does change, you've had that experience, you've had that one foot in the college world, community college, and that transition to your job isn't so daunting. We've got to look at it as lifelong learning.
Oakland County, Macomb County, Washtenaw County, Wayne County, they're known as Automation Alley. We can start our kids young in basic science, a little bit of electronics and stuff at a young age and get them going. Michigan is also the Great Lakes state. Do you know how many boats there are in Michigan right now? We are second in the nation in the boating industry. And we have no schools or vocational to train kids on marine repair. That's one thing we're missing. The only school that has marine repairs in Florida. We need to get that in. We need to get jobs in here. We also have a higher recreational area. We have hunting, fishing. We have RTVs or ATVs and stuff like that. Motorcycle repair. Get those kids started in. You can start them in high school. You can start them in grade school and get them in there. And it can be sponsored by corporations.
All right, so I'm just going to say let's stop using the mic since they seem to kind of be going in and out. So just speak loud.
Don't pick them up.
It won't pick up at all.
Can I say why they're not working? Because when you cross, it's like the radio wave, it gets like disconnected. So sometimes if someone's blocking it, or if you lean forward, then it doesn't send.
Okay, so leave it in the base. Is that what we're saying?
Not leaning at the base. It's like, but if you like move, I think you could like find the sweet spot.
Okay.
All right, or you could just shout it. It still takes up if you shout.
Okay. All right, I'm going to try and maybe we'll find that sweet spot. I agree with some of the things that have been said before. Skilled trades, there is a shortage, and there are some good partnerships being made, as Laura mentioned, with the unions and community colleges. One thing I've been talking about is green and blue jobs, where Michigan is actually poised to succeed in a lot of areas where we can partner with other institutions where they would have access to emerging technologies at the higher education level, and students would have a direct path to the careers that they desire. But I want to diverge a bit here because my father, he taught vocational education for 35 years. And this was a problem that we had, is for a while he had parapros. But then as school funds kept getting cut, they took away the parapros. And there were kids in his class, they didn't have the requisite math background to succeed in electronics. He was not trained on how to handle kids with special needs. We do need to direct more funding there, but we also need to make sure that our teachers have the ability to handle the kids that are going into the classroom and make sure that they are all able to succeed.
Well, currently there are thousands of jobs that are open for people, and we just don't have the skills to fill those jobs. And they're good, clean jobs. I'm sure my father was a tool and die maker, and I'm sure his shop was was in it, and it was very, very dirty. If you go into manufacturing today, you could almost eat off the floor of any manufacturing company that you would go to. So we are also, Michigan anyway, the state has been informing counselors how they need to get up to speed about a lot of these jobs that are available, and so that they are urging kids to try something new. Maybe it's something that we get them into the shops through a coordinated effort. We get them in so that they can see the other options besides going to college. We also passed some legislation to introduce coding as a language. Coding is really a language of the future. It is a high-tech language, but it's not French or German, but it's still helpful. So we just invested $100 million also.
I'm sorry, your time is up. Mr. Berman.
We've created this elementary to college pipeline, and just by the numbers, it doesn't work for everybody. Looking at the college dropout rate, the high school dropout rate, that's why it's very important to have these skilled trades, vocational training in the high schools to keep those kids in there who don't feel like they want to go on to college. And it's not for everybody. And what we need to do is get rid of the stigma associated with that. And Kathy brought up a great point, coding. I ran into a young man this summer in Wixom, and he goes to Walled Lake Central, and in the afternoon he goes over to the tech center for classes. And people are like, ooh, you're a bad kid, you have to leave campus and go to the tech center. No, he takes computer coding classes there, and he already has 5 certifications in computers, and he's actually looking to go on to college. But it's bringing those skilled trades training, those tools back into the high schools themselves. And yeah, funding is very important, and so what we have to look at as some of these things, these collaborations and public-private partnerships.
I need to stop you, sorry. All right, our next question, we're going to start with you, Ms. Dodd. What is your plan to hire a state superintendent and assure that he or she is able to serve our state without partisanship?
That's a really good question. I think it's a good question for anybody hiring anyone anywhere, including our local schools. I think it's a really tricky time right now, and something that we need to work on. And as it relates to hiring a superintendent for the state, I really think we need to value expertise, and we need to look at who are the people who are doing great things in our state and also outside of our state, and talk to them and spend some time really searching for the best person. Partisanship is really, really tricky, and it's a hard thing to interview for because there are, laws and things that don't allow you to ask a lot of those questions you might want to ask. But I think it needs to be an expectation of any job, anywhere, that we fulfill it to the best of our ability without putting our partisan ideas in the way. I see those sitting at this table and listening to the folks with me, how challenging that could be though, because we do have so many different opinions, so it's a tough job.
Picking a state superintendent is the one official job of the State Board of Education, and I think they do a pretty good job at it. And when our last state superintendent, Brian Whiston, did operate in a really good nonpartisan way, I believe. So I actually trust the State Board of Education to come up. I think there's been some talk to make it an appointed position from the governor, and I don't think that's a good idea because then it will become more partisan and you'll see swings as governors change. So I think keeping it as a responsibility of the State Board of Education is the best way to keep it nonpartisan.
I kind of agree with her, Christine, on that. The state school board should help pick the qualified candidate and try to keep, make sure it's nonpartisan. We need to get somebody who's totally qualified and have them screened and have them, go to, have the school board approve it and do a real good vetting process on it. That's the best thing I can tell you about it. Just like any job interview.
You're not going to hear much different from me here. I do believe we need to look at, for example, what other states have been doing, where they are succeeding, and see what can we learn from them. Tennessee, for example, I know is focused a lot on teacher training and a little bit less on standardized testing. But I do believe we need to make sure that the hiring of the state superintendent needs to stay in the hands of nonpartisan people as much as possible. When you have a group of people like the State Board of Education doing the hiring process, they're all going to have to work together. They're all going to have to set aside whatever partisan ideals they have in order to make sure that the best person is selected. And again, expertise is just the most important thing as far as picking this candidate, and I do trust the State Board to do this.
Well, the State Board of Education is made up of people from all the parties, from both parties at least. And they did a great job with Brian Winston. He's really been an asset. He was very innovative. He coordinated with the state administration, I thought, very well. He reported to committees and told us what he was doing. He accepted suggestions, and he was very accountable and transparent as well. So I think it worked. We proved that it could work, and so I don't see any reason to change.
I don't even recall the original question, but at this point, I think that was like 15 minutes ago.
What is your plan to hire a state superintendent and assure that he or she is able to serve without partisanship?
Yeah, there is no plan because this is, it's up to it's already been talked about. It's up to the State Board of Education that hires. It's a constitutional mandate. Our education is enshrined in the Michigan Constitution and how it's set up. So really that question doesn't apply.
Once again, government overreach. I'm going to repeat everything that was said, so I'm not repetitive. So government overreach, the boards can handle that. I'm not really for public education anyway. So the board, wherever they did, that's what they did. But that government needs to stop overreaching. That's too much.
Thank you. That will end our question section. So I'm going to go ahead. You will all get 1 minute for a closing statement. We're going to go reverse of how we began. So we'll begin with you, Ms. Dodd.
This was a great forum to be able to talk specifically about education, and not very often do we get an opportunity to really dig deep into a topic. So I appreciate that, and thank you for hosting it. Education is in my opinion, the single most important investment we can make in our future. I'm concerned about the idea of moving away from centralized education and centralized school, because I think every home is different, and the one thing that's the same for every kid in our country is the ability to get a good public education. And I think that's an important job, and it's an important thing that we can do in our society to invest in our society moving forward. I'm dedicated to that. I'm dedicated to figure out how we can fix the public education funding model. So every kid
gets what they need in order to be a successful, thriving, healthy adult.
Oh, it is?
Yep, we're going back, we're changing it. It's so confusing.
I'm not using that. Let's stay right here. I think my voice is loud enough. Sorry about that. The problem with education in America, period, is conditions us, programs us, indoctrinates us, and it leads us to where we are today. We do these forums and we have these debates and elections, but at the end of the day, most citizens are going to go to the polls and they're going to vote for their local Republican or their local Democrat and don't even give nobody else a chance. So that is what's wrong with education. It don't educate. It just conditions everybody to think one way. And everybody is different. Everybody is unique. Everybody have God-given skills, talent. Schools don't bring it out at all. School want everybody to be the exact same way, be obedient to a higher authority, same difference. I really hope come November 6th, you guys do not just look at the duopoly we have. Pay attention to libertarians across the board, the governor and from all of the departments. Thank you. Anthony Crawford, by the way.
All right.
So, Mr. Berman.
Thank you. Thank you, Jackie, for hosting this in the Walled Lake Consolidated School District, PTA, League of Women Voters. I know I had a hand in this as well. It was a great forum focusing on education, which is hugely important, and I think that we all agree with that. Anthony brought up some points of maybe some of the failings of our education system and some things that could be negative. Overall, you have to be informed. You have to be educated, and our education system should do that, create thinkers, and you have to have that knowledge in order to make life decisions, in order to vote, in order to choose the best candidate. And maybe you should be Republican, Democrat, Libertarian. We're all up here, but education really shouldn't be partisan. Okay, it's teaching history, mathematics. There's no partisanship to math. Okay, so with all that, I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this. This is really very helpful. This is my last election, and I feel humbled and honored to have represented the people in my district, which is South Lyon, Lyon Township, Northville, Novi Township, the city of Novi, and Walled Lake. I have been an independent thinker, and I think Chris would vouch for the fact that I am not just always going along with the party. I try to do what's best in the way I feel that my district would want me to vote if they were sitting in my chair. And I know my district very well, and I always try to vote that way. I'm a strong common sense kind of person, and I focus on policies that make life better for the people that live in my district. So I'm a champion for less government, bureaucracy, and more local control. And I thank you all. It's great to be here with you tonight.
It's been a long night for a lot of you. I want to thank you all for sticking with all of us, and I wanted to thank Jackie and the PTA and all the people that had a hand in putting this together. I'm dedicated to making sure that we have something that works for all our kids. And there's been a lot of talk recently about how there's been an increase in funding for public schools, which is kind of a misnomer. What's been happening is the funding goes to the schools have to turn around and hand it right back to the state to fund the pension system. And it's not fair to our kids. And it doesn't put us on the level playing field with charters, which has been, unfortunately, part of the Great Lakes Education Project and the DeVos agenda. Those charter schools don't have those legacy costs. The increased funding needs to go into the classroom. It needs to make sure that our teachers are trained. We have technology and that class sizes are small. I'm dedicated to making sure that all of our kids have a chance to succeed. And I hopefully you guys will work with me on that. I've got a vested interest. My kids are in these schools. I want to make sure that they have the same chances that yours do.
Thank you.
I want to thank Jackie and PTA and the League of Women Voters for being here today for this forum. I was in the Air Force. Like I said, I was a problem solver. One of the things is if I, see a problem, I go and research it, I do my homework, and I study it. I come up with the best solution. There's also rules and laws of unintended consequences. That being said, I like to give people in Michigan a choice of where to send their kids. I believe I want to do everything I can to support the parents. The parents has basically the final say of how they want to raise their kids, and I want to give them the opportunity to do it the best they can. Thank you.
You too.
For tonight, and thank you everyone for being here. I want to apologize a little bit for my very brief answer for the last one, but for the third grade reading, and that's because I fought so hard against that bill, because it was punitive, right? The whole idea was to get resources to kids, but in the end, we had to have a hammer and punish somebody. And that's where our education system has gone. We punish teachers, we punish the school districts by withholding money, and we make it harder than it has to be. We have to get back to putting the power in the hands of our professionals, of our teachers. And we have to give them the adequate resources to do that. We've worked on a lot of legislation. I've worked on accountability legislation, teachers legislation, literacy legislation, and it just sits there and sits there and sits there. And it's time to have hearings on these. It's time to pass a real agenda for education and put the kids' future at the forefront. And we do that by supporting our teachers and adequately funding our students. So I hope to get back there for my third and final term and finally get it done. Thank you.
All right. I would like to thank you all for coming tonight. I appreciate you all being here. You asked some wonderful questions, and I hopefully we all learned a lot. And thank you to our panel of candidates. I appreciate your time. I don't know if you know how much we appreciate that. So thank you. Thank you for talking to us about education, because obviously we're all here because it's very important.